All right, welcome to the show. This is Shattered Script Podcast. I'm your host, Jared May. And here on the STS network, we are finally in a new environment. We're in a new house. See, we got the new setup. I'm still kind of working on the setup, so I guess kind of give me some grace this episode with the setup. Now, I know I'm going to get some complaints or whatever, but there's plenty of room in this new place. You know, I'm no longer in an apartment. There's plenty of room in this place to make a good setup. But I'm kind of doing a weird little angle one this time around. But I'm excited to talk both college football and NFL in this solo edition episode. Because, you know, in the college football atmosphere this previous week, it was kind of like a glimpse of very intriguing matchups between big conference schools and in-conference matchups. But at the same time, outside of that, like there was a good game for each time slot, but there wasn't an action-packed time slot, if that makes sense. In my opinion, I mean, the other games were kind of just like your throwaway games where we play Appalachian State, kick the living shit out of them. This following week I'll be covering that as well, kind of forecasting that. But this following week is going to be awesome. Of course, I'm going to be at the Auburn A&M game. I'll be sure to get some content for that with some of the guys that have been contributing to the podcast in the challenge the script, as well as we had the technical difficulty issue with one of the guest interviews earlier this year. So kind of a redemption tour there. Maybe we'll get some of their takes on the game and implement it on the channel. Speaking of the channel, if you are not a subscriber yet, I would highly encourage, and I would ask pretty please that you would subscribe and then follow. That way you can get notifications whenever a new episode releases for the STS network. So the way it works is every Tuesday and Thursday we release an episode. Tuesdays are college football, Thursdays are NFL. And a lot of times we'll have contributors like the medical guy or the analyst join in and contribute and put their thoughts into each one and kind of encapsulate both the NFL and the college football atmosphere. Here on this episode today, since I moved into a new house, and you know, last week I was sick Monday and Tuesday, so it was delayed. This week I was moving into a new house, so we're kind of like out of balance the last 2 weeks. But this one will have all of it packed in one episode. But we're going to start with our favorite first, and our favorite, of course, if you're a follower of the show, you know that college football is our favorite. So to get to the channel, search at Shatter the Script, or go to TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter. Type in the words Shatter the Script or STS_pod, and you'll find all of our 30 to 60 second clips, segment clips, and full episodes. Or you can go to all of those and find the link tree, and you'll find all of our links within there. But yeah, we're starting off with college football first. Sorry for the long intro, boys. I know we're trying to get down to the nitty gritty with football, but I got to do the principalities first. I got to do the principalities first and foremost before we get into anything. So I'm actually in a swinging chair too. Let's talk about this. So I'm going to do a little side angle here, but going back to college football, the biggest thing I've thought about covering was I saw ESPN put out their FPI poll after week 4, and I couldn't ignore it. And I know usually we kind of recap what happened in college football atmosphere. What game did you see? You know, I look at this one and I see, you know, the top 5, whatever. Why is Texas in the top 5? I'm not sure. But they have Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama at 3, Georgia, and Texas at 5. And this is kind of just my, I'm using ESPN as a scapegoat to basically come to a channel like mine, because when I see things like this, I just think that the non-Joe Schmoes and the Joe Schmoes out there go, really? I mean, that's what you think? And kind of go, psh, whatever. I wish there was somewhere else we could go to get a real authentic take, and somewhere that brings the facts and brings the truth. Well, the truth of the matter is, you know, Alabama got blown out by Florida State. And I don't really, FPI poll, whatever, whether that's relevant or not, ESPN misses on a lot of things. Hell, the AP poll misses on a lot of things. As, you know, we exposed that one woman earlier in the year about, you know, why in the world is this person ranked over the next person? And it's like, well, you know, there are plenty of other people in the AP voting poll that are contributing to the AP poll in voting. that do their job. But for me, I don't think you should take one bad apple and find. It's like, yes, we should, because there are hundreds of thousands, close to 1 million probably, of fans nationwide that they look at that. They look at that AP poll and they go, man, I'd kill to have that job. I would kill to rank college football teams and be rewarded with such a vote, to where I go, well, Florida lost to Miami, and Florida also got their butts kicked by this team. But why are they ranked and someone else is not? And Vanderbilt played this team and kicked the snot out of South Carolina, but Illinois is ranked number 9, and they didn't play their hardest opponent they've played through the 3 weeks previously until they played Indiana was Duke. And it's like, well, what are they doing at number 9? Oklahoma has shown more than almost anybody that they can beat ranked teams. Why is Illinois number 9? And then Indiana comes into town and kicks the living shit out of them, 63-10. So I look at that and I go to Texas. Obviously, Texas is like, oh, we got one of the best defense in the SEC. Well, 3 out of your 4 games have been throwaway games. Whereas the first one you played against Matt Patricia, and granted, you do have a good defense, Texas. I know people that follow this channel know that I'm an Aggie fan. I am a realist A&M fan. I don't really have to keep saying that anymore. I really don't. But as the pod grows, I have to kind of repeat it over and over again, unless people, get assumptions about me. But when you look at Texas's defense, they lost more on the offensive side than they did on the defensive side. So going into that, there's a very strong defense, but there's a reason that they look as strong as they did. Oklahoma, on the other hand, the second toughest defense in the SEC, they have played Michigan and they have played Auburn, and had a really strong first 4 games. Granted, we're going to get into John Mateer's injury later in this episode, so stick around for that. Going into this, they got Texas at number 5. They obviously have not shown enough to be a top 5 team, let alone really a top 10 team. They're still kind of struggling. I would allow them, as an AP voter myself, I would put them between the 10 and 15 range and make them battle into the top 10. Make them prove themselves into the top 10, because this week they're going to be playing Florida. DJ Lagway's in a boot, and Arch Manning is kind of getting his swagger back, I guess, with stunting over Sam Houston State. And I know people are out there looking at the Johnny Manziel clip after Johnny Manziel said, oh, that's a cornball move from Arch Manning. But let's be clear about one thing. Arch Manning walked into the end zone. Johnny Manziel fucking depleted a defensive back into the end zone and then walked over him. There's a little bit of a difference there in terms of stunting on somebody. When you truck anybody, any college athlete, and believe me, the analyst played at Sam Houston. One of my good friends, Davion, played at Sam Houston. Those aren't no slouches. They ain't no slouches. They are damn good athletes. They're in the top 1% of athletes. So just because they're a non-ranked FBS school, we should not be disrespecting those athletes. Having Johnny Manziel, who's a 5'11", 190, 180 at tops quarterback, go in there and truck the ever-living crap out of somebody in the end zone is an impressive thing for a quarterback. So when you saw that, of course, Johnny Manziel was a nutcase in college, and he's admitted that. So when you look at that, that's not apples to apples. That's apples to oranges. When you look at Arch Manning at 6'3", a much bigger figure, he is a runner as well, walk into the end zone from the goal line, it's like, okay, bro, like it is a cornball move, whether he's done it before himself, as Manziel stated, or not. So, and then I look at, they put Indiana at 6, USC at 7, no thanks. Ole Miss at 8. They're still missing Austin Simmons. Tennessee at 9, and Penn State at 10. But when I look more into this, I see Miami outside of the top 10. I see, which I disagree with, I see Notre Dame inside the top 15. Completely disagree with that, and I spoke about that in the previous episode. If you can't beat ranked teams, you should not be ranked. And then I go into A&M being outside of Missouri and Vanderbilt, OU being behind A&M. I just completely disagree with his entire list. And, moving into the actual AP poll for the top 25, this is where I think it gets interesting, where the top 5 teams have been the ones that have kind of shown that they can beat the most teams so far. And that being Georgia at number 5, LSU at number 4, number 3 being Penn State, number 2, Miami. Boy, Miami looks really good. I know they've honestly, something to disclaim. No, number 1 is Ohio State. But back to number 2, Miami. something about them that to consider is they've played in bad weather, I think, in at least 2 football games. So the low scoring, I think something like that will change gears as hurricane season kind of goes away, pun intended. So something to keep an eye on there. I think they're a much more explosive team than what the scoreboard shows, and it's kind of truth of the matter that when you can't just go off a box score. But going into, I want to recap a few games from this previous weekend in week 4. I won't just go through the AP poll and kind of bruise you guys to death with number 4, number 5, number 10. Let's talk about Texas Tech. Let's really get into it. So we've hinted at it as we've gone through the offseason and into week 1, and we've seen the players in the Big 12. It's like, okay, we're going to open the season up with, we thought Kansas State was going to be for real. Kansas State is far from that. Avery Johnson really took a step back, either that or the personnel. Arizona State lost to Mississippi State. That is not a good look for a team that was a contender to be in the college football playoffs last year. Iowa State looks pretty solid, but the one what everybody was really excited about was Texas Tech, because they put that oil and gas money into the NIL program essentially and acquired so many athletes through recruiting and through the transfer portal. So when we saw this, we were like, okay, Utah's kind of back to being a pretty good football team, and that is the big noon kickoff for this weekend in the morning slot. I want to see how Texas Tech handles their business. Excuse me. And truth be told, the first half, and really 2.5 quarters, almost 3 quarters of the football game, it was ugly turnovers and penalties on both sides of the field. And I think that's more of a that's more of a 1-800 gambler conspiracy theory for me, is where you look at Big 12 teams and go, okay, games like this, Texas Tech, we're throwing the over on the total for the game. What's the total at? 52.5. Okay, we're going over that. They're going to be scoring nonstop in this football game. It's going to be a classic Big 12 shootout. I mean, they're the Red Raiders. It's always a shootout. And what we found out was Texas Tech could play a little bit of defense. And that's something that's extremely rare that we've seen from Texas Tech. But at simultaneously, it's something that we truly wanted to see from Texas Tech. And let alone as they began to pull away from Utah. I know there's an interception towards the end of the game, but as they began to pull away, they were without their starting quarterback, Morton. And I can't remember if it was a rib shot or some type of arm injury, but Morton had to leave the game, and then they had to play their true freshman, who has a good statute. I think he's like 6'4" or something like that. But let me see what the backup did in this game. I mean, he went 13 of 16, 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hey, backup quarterbacks out there. Phenomenal job as a true freshman. I believe true freshman. I know the classification is at least freshman, whether it be a red shirt or true. They ran the ball well, in my opinion, from what we were watching. Hammond ran the ball well. Morton, he did his part. And I say that, but he had 2 interceptions, and really the backup quarterback outplayed Morton and was able to substantially gain ground against Utah once Morton was out. So that's something to keep a note of. If it were me at Texas Tech, you know what you have in Morton, and you saw something great in a freshman, keep that freshman in your back pocket and throw him in there like Tua Tagovailoa if you ever need a switch up later in the season. But I think you have to stick with Morton whenever he comes back, depending on if he's healthy. And, the quarterback for Utah, Devin Dampier, he is a pretty solid guy. I think he's a great quarterback, especially for the Big 12, and he's kind of revamped Utah from last year with Cam Rising. He's 7th-year guy or something like that. Finally, he's gone, and we're giving these young guys a shot, which is another topic you could totally go down the rabbit hole on, is eligibility in college football and how that's a problem. But when I've looked at when I was watching this game, and it was boring for the first 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden, boom, Texas Tech kind of showed some resiliency, showed some defense, and then, of course, their fireworks on offense. So, in my opinion, watching Texas Tech versus who we thought would be the other contender in the Big 12, I don't think this game got away from Utah. I think Texas Tech is truly that good. With all the adversity that they face in this football game, with the penalties and the turnovers and the losing their starting quarterback, and to win by more than 3 possessions is quite impressive. And I am waiting to see what other Big 12 team will be the contender this year. There's my guess currently would be somebody like Ohio State, but I really don't think someone like them is going to beat Texas Tech. I think they're the favorite to make the college football playoff out of the Big 4 schools. So props to Texas Tech. Then you move into the Oklahoma game. Here's where we're going to kind of trade off between what happened in this game and then kind of cover the John Mateer injury and how that correlates with the Red River rivalry coming up and the outlook on Oklahoma's season. But, obviously, if you're not aware, Jackson Arnold was Oklahoma's quarterback last year, who started over Hawkins. I know is his last name. I'm forgetting his first name. But Hawkins, who's a scrambler running back for the Sooners and who will be taking over for John Mateer for Oklahoma. But if you were not aware, Jackson Arnold transferred from Oklahoma to Auburn. So there was kind of like okay, this is my get back game, right? Like I want to prove to Oklahoma that they got rid of the wrong guy and that I am that dude. Well, breaking news for all college football fans. If you watch this game, I know the score was close. I think that's strictly due to Auburn. Yes, they've always kind of had a pretty solid defense, and Oklahoma is for sure one of the best defenses in the SEC behind Brett Venables. But if you watch Jackson Arnold play, I'm 99% sure he's blind. He sits in the pocket way too long. He misses wide open crossing routes, wide open flag routes, and it's kind of atrocious to watch. But then he kind of makes up for it with his feet. And I'm not trying to disrespect him. This is just what I see from a former quarterback. That is the main position I watch. So the analyst watches the offensive line, and I've been trying to learn that as well. I mean, I already know a lot about the offensive line, but try to read that. It's hard to do all things at once without replaying every play. But I like to watch quarterback because that's what I played. So when I watch Jackson Arnold sit in the pocket and then find some wide open, third progression or second progression and just completely airmail him, John Mateer doesn't do that. John Mateer is on target. He's effective with his legs, more effective with his legs because he's more efficient in the passing game. Let alone he is lethal down the field. He's lethal playmaking ability. What we're kind of seeing with Jackson Arnold, to be honest, is a lot like Bo Nix at Auburn, where it's like, dude, you got to make these throws. You're inaccurate in all these things. But he'll pull a play out of his ass in the second or fourth quarter and go, holy crap, that just got us back in this game. And so Jackson Arnold is still young. I think there's still a long-term potential for him. And I think Auburn should continue to ride with him next year and however many years he has left in eligibility. But I did not like what I see from Auburn at the quarterback position. I think, honestly, if you can just get it to Corey Coleman, I believe we're going to double check and see if that was his first name. I always look at his name and go, is that not the dude from Baylor? The same name? Oh, Cam Coleman. There we go. If you can just get it to Cam Coleman, and granted, they do get it to Cam Coleman, who probably will be a first or second round draft pick in the NFL. Your offense is going to be quite effective. But the problem is Jackson Arnold is thus far too inaccurate. And I think that is allowing teams to kind of walk over Auburn when they shouldn't be. But on the Oklahoma side, John Mateer was 24 of 36 for 271 yards, a touchdown passing, and a touchdown on the ground. Now, he had 10 carries for 29 yards, averaging 2.9 yards per carry. I think what John Mateer has shown us is dependability, as well as, ironically, as far as how much he's carried the ball. I would argue durability. And this is something I talked about in the previous episode where I said I'm concerned that if they keep running John Mateer the way that they're doing, a lot like how I criticized Clemson for running Cade Klubnik as much as they were. And granted, John Mateer is a much better runner than Cade Klubnik, as the analyst noted last episode. But I watch this and I go, man, eventually you're going to have to stop leaning on the quarterback runs at the goal line where he's taking all these hits, or he's going to suffer an injury. And Lord and behold, now we've got a right hand throwing hand injury to, I believe it was the thumb. Yeah. Yeah, it's a broken bone in his right hand, and the severity of the injury necessitates surgery. So this is where it kind of gets complex. And honestly, where we'd like to have the medical guy. Surgery is always kind of like he's got to go on IR sort of thing, if you're in the NFL, and to speak in NFL terms. So when you look at it in terms of Oklahoma's schedule, obviously they've had a hot start at 4-0. Excuse me. They're moving into a bye week. So 1 week with the bye. The next week is Kent State. That's an easy gimme game right there. And then going into the third week, they play the Red River rivalry. I believe John Mateer is going to be out at least 4 weeks. And granted, by this time, they'll be practically 5-0 going into the Red River shootout. I'm going to call it that because I have a hard time pronouncing rivalry. And Arch Manning in Texas as a whole is going to, I think this is out of the last 4 matchups, this is their third time playing a backup quarterback for Oklahoma. So, and I think Hawkins is, if he plays versus Texas in this Red River shootout, he played them as well last year as well. And I'm disappointed in that because this was a real test for the Texas Longhorns, another one to see, okay, maybe they slipped up against Ohio State being the first game of the season, but let's see what they do against John Mateer and the Sooners defense. And now we're probably, I would say, a 95% chance are not going to see that. We're going to see Arch Manning versus Hawkins in the Red River shootout. And I'm just severely disappointed in that because then we don't necessarily get a good measure. And Hawkins is not somebody to sleep on either. I'm not saying that. I think he's going to be a solid quarterback in college football once Mateer is gone. But, you know, this is just one of those things that I look at and go, man, when are we going to address the elephant in the room where Texas kind of catches these breaks on these rivalry matchups and things like that? And I mentioned it earlier, Texas going into Florida this week. They're not playing DJ Lagway's in a boot. Who knows if he's going to play this week? So they might play Florida without Lagway. And granted, Florida's not that good, but without Lagway, they're probably even worse. Then you follow up the next week. That's against the Sooners without John Mateer. So I'm really concerned with this for the Texas Longhorn fans and for the Texas Longhorn kind of congregation, if you will. Whereas if we're going to play these teams, then I kind of want to see Texas blossom a bit. I kind of want to see Arch Manning blossom versus a tough opponent. And we just haven't seen that. And I can't give them the credit of beating an Oklahoma team without their star player. I just can't do it. And then we just go into hypotheticals from there. And so I'm pretty upset about that. And I'm hoping that Oklahoma maintains their record because I think with John Mateer would have beaten them this year. I predicted that and prophesized that, if you will, months ago before the season started. And now it's looking like that's going to be taken from me, which is just thank you. Yeah. So anywho, that'll be interesting to see. I'm pretty pissed about it because John Mateer was my Heisman favorite. And what does this do to his odds? I'm not sure. But in terms of quarterback play, that was just something I was really hoping to see was Arch Manning versus Mateer. And then one game that I wasn't able to watch, but just worth noting, was Michigan versus Nebraska. And man, you know, I know Michigan took an L to John Mateer in Oklahoma, in Norman, Oklahoma. But going into Nebraska, who they're on the come up in terms of talent, in terms of quarterback play with Dylan Raiola. Bryce Underwood was up 30-20 late in this ball game when the game was practically over. And then Nebraska's kind of scored a gimme touchdown towards the end. And you can argue garbage time. And they win by 3, 30-27. But hey, this is what we talk about every year with Nebraska. And it kind of used to be this way with Tennessee, where in the preseason rankings, Tennessee and Nebraska were always talked about as being these strong front runners for their division because of what they used to be. And then Tennessee would finish 7-5 and Nebraska would finish like 5-7. Last year was the same thing. Holy crap, we might have a team in Nebraska, and they played close with Ohio State, I believe. And it's like, not much to show for there. And I do like Matt Rule in Nebraska. I think that's a phenomenal fit. And then we go into this game, you're playing a freshman, Bryce Underwood, with Michigan, who's coming off an L versus Oklahoma, and you kind of get the snot kicked out of you. The scoreboard does not show that, but they were down 10. The game was over. So that's worth noting. I think Bryce Underwood and Michigan, they've got their guy, and Lord knows they're happy about it with all the money that they gave him and all the influence that they bestowed upon him, before the season started. So Michigan is going to be a fun Big Ten challenge for all the contenders in that division. However, I'm not too keen on them being college football playoff contenders. I think they're going to be fun, but I'm thinking like 8-4, possibly 9-3 if they steal a game from Ohio State again this year. And Julian saying with Ohio State in that Michigan game at the end of the year, he's going to have to ball out. He's going to have to. There's no other option. And I've said this before. Julian Sayin's going to have to, he has to himself win a football game eventually if they're going to win the Big Ten. They're number one right now, but just, put a pin in that. And then I'm going to say his name. I'm hoping to say it. Yeah, Pribula with Missouri. He's looking phenomenal. South Carolina has kind of fallen off the cliff in terms of who we thought they were, but Missouri is looking like a force to be reckoned with. I talked about Indiana versus Illinois and why why are they ranked number 10 or inside the top 10? I don't know. Their best opponent that they beat was Duke, and granted, it was pretty handily, and Duke ain't no slouch in terms of, I think they're in the Big Ten or in the ACC, one of the two. And Indiana's been good with Kurt Cignetti for quite some time, or ever since his arrival in Indiana. So the Hoosiers are off to a great start at 4-0. Miami takes Florida pretty handily in the weather. And then that kind of wraps up the recap for college football. Sorry, I'm about to cough all the time. Okay. Let's look at week 5, this upcoming weekend. And we'll cover this, and then I'll probably throw out one or two little cookies from college football, and then we'll move into the NFL atmosphere. But you look at this weekend. Of course, I mentioned before, I'm going to the Auburn at Texas A&M game at Kyle Field with the crew. Going to be super exciting. I haven't been to an A&M game in quite some time. Honestly, due to how freaking expensive it is these days. But I look at, you got Alabama and Georgia. Alabama at Georgia. Now, this is Alabama's turn to redeem themselves. This is Ty Simpson's chance to show what he's capable of versus Gunnar Stockton, who just had an overly impressive game versus Jose Aguilar and the Tennessee Volunteers. A come-from-behind victory, a high-scoring shootout, making the plays on fourth down, making the plays in overtime when it counted. Gunnar Stockton really stepped up, and this is kind of goes with my take from the beginning of the year, saying Georgia was going to be the team to beat in the SEC, and nobody's really talking about them because Arch Manning is taking all the headlines in the SEC. And truth be told, people are talking more about Oklahoma than they are about Georgia. And Georgia is still coached by Kirby Smart, by the way. Kirby Smart is still there. So they're damn good. And if I had to forecast this game, I don't know what the spread is or anything like that. I'm pretty sure it's a night game. Yeah, it's going to be the 6:30 game. So right after the A&M game, I should be able to tune in. But, man, I got Georgia by at least 7 in this matchup. I really think Kalen DeBoer versus Kirby Smart. I'm taking Kirby Smart over DeBoer all day long. And I understand college football is a very unpredictable atmosphere, but, man, from what I've seen from Gunnar Stockton, it's just unless something goes terribly wrong. Granted, Georgia's defense, that secondary is going to have to kind of put some wraps on Ryan Williams in this matchup and kind of blanket and kind of shadow and shade over a safety over the head of the wide receiver to get him under wraps in this game, or else they might be in trouble like they were against Tennessee. But I think Georgia's going to be the front runner in the SEC this year. I don't think Alabama is going to be who we have always seen that they are, especially with Saban and the team and the recruiting team that Kalen DeBoer inherited last year with Jalen Milroe. So that'll be interesting to watch. But I got Georgia in that one. Then you move over to the biggest where college game day is going with Oregon, at Penn State. And, I love Drew Allar. I was very high on him going into the season, but I'm higher on Dante Moore. I watched Dante Moore throw the football. He's more precise. He's more efficient. His downfield throwing ability is what was my top pick so far. I mean, from anybody out there, I think he's the one that's kind of been the most exciting to watch on these large kind of bang plays, if you will. These boom or bust plays where it's a 50-50 ball down the field. And honestly, him and Marcel Reed have been phenomenal in that aspect. But I think Oregon takes this one, and I know they're going into Penn State, but I think this is going to be kind of a dogfight. And I trust Oregon's offense more than I do Penn State's. And Grant, I would not be shocked if Penn State did their thing at home. Going into Penn State is not an easy atmosphere to play in. But yeah, I'm gonna roll with the dice on that one. I'm gonna say Oregon takes that game. And then you talk about LSU at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is playing without Austin Simmons, but that most likely because I think he's still dealing with that ankle injury. And Brian Kelly and Garrett Nussmeier, great combo on offense. They're playing really well. They're playing within themselves. They escaped that bullet at the beginning of the year. It was like that, okay, we're going to play Clemson. But now that Clemson game is starting to look a little less impressive, which I don't look at it that way. I see a lot of people were mentioning that. So, well, Clemson's not as good. They're 1-3. They're terrible. The Dabo's done. But at the beginning of the season, going into Death Valley, quote unquote, at Clemson, and winning that football game, and it was a nasty football game. That's impressive. I mean, LSU hadn't won a season opener in like 3 or 4 years. So, Lane Kiffin versus Brian Kelly, I think this is all about defense, 100%. Lane Kiffin, we know, is going to be offensive-oriented in this game, but can an unstoppable force stop an immovable object? However you want to say that phrase. An immovable object meets an unstoppable force, however you want to phrase it. I think LSU's defense is far superior to Ole Miss. I think with a backup quarterback and Austin Simmons, Austin Simmons is backup at Ole Miss, who showed great signs of talent versus Arkansas last year. Granted, Arkansas's defense, as we saw versus Memphis, is not very good. Sorry to all the Pig fans out there, but I think that when you look at it in terms of that, sides heavy. My outlook on this game sides heavily with LSU, and I hate saying that because I think LSU is also on upset alert in this game. They don't know what this Ole Miss quarterback is capable of. Clearly, Arkansas didn't. So I'm interested to see this game, and I'm almost too scared to make a projection. But, looking at it, the way that LSU plays defense, the way that Ole Miss plays offense, I think they would be more efficient with Austin Simmons. I think, like I mentioned, as we saw, Arkansas wasn't the best defensive SEC team out there by any means. Obviously getting uprooted by Memphis in the entire second half, getting diced in 50 pieces in the second half. So I'm going to roll with LSU on this one. And granted, this is the second game on this list that I picked the visiting team to win the football game. But I think LSU gets it done. If they had Austin Simmons, I would 100% call this upset alert and would argue that Ole Miss has a chance to overpower them on offense. And I hope their backup proves me wrong. And then Tennessee goes into Mississippi State. I think this is an easy win for Tennessee. I understand Mississippi State is off to quite a fun start, but I don't think Mississippi State has the depth that Tennessee has, and I don't think their quarterback, Mississippi State's been very, very impressive the first 4 games. I think it's Blake Shapen, I think is his name. But Jose Aguilar, what Josh Heupel's doing over there at Tennessee, I think that overpowers Mississippi State and the Bulldogs. Ohio State at Washington, I think whatever the spread is, Ohio State clearly covers it. Indiana versus Iowa, there's your low-scoring ball game of the weekend. If you're going to take the under, take it for the total on this one, whatever the total is. But I think Iowa has a chance to upset them just in terms of defense. But Indiana was a strong outing versus Illinois, a top 10 team. It's looking like Indiana would blow them out of the water. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I think Iowa kind of they don't cover. I'm sure they're the underdogs. I don't think they're going to cover. I think they're going to be within whatever the spread is. And I think that's purely because it's a home game for Iowa, and Iowa seems to be a tough opponent for really most everybody, especially if they're not able to get the ground game running on the Indiana side of the football. So then you look at USC at Illinois, and Illinois is coming off a big time L, as I mentioned, versus Indiana last week. But we don't really know what USC is yet. We kind of know what Illinois is. It's like, okay, they can beat most teams on their schedule, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, we're not a believer in Illinois. So when I look at it in terms of that, I think USC has a good chance to win this game, but I also think Illinois is a little bit hungry after getting the snot kicked out of them last week. I'm going to take the home team. I'm going to take Illinois in this one. I think Illinois is pissed off, and I don't think USC is as good as they're advertised. I know they just came off a 10. Nobody's watching them because they're playing at 10 p.m. every night. They just beat 3-0 Michigan State, 45-31. Offense is going to be powerful, but I think Illinois, I think they sneak out a dub. I don't know what it is. It's a gut feeling. I could be wrong. And I'm not a believer in Lincoln Riley at USC. I'm just not. And whatever Illinois is doing, to get blown out by Indiana, I think that might have been a one-time thing. And I don't think they let USC do that to them. TCU at Arizona State. I'm taking Arizona State in that one. I'm taking the home team. And then Arizona goes to play Iowa State. Like I said before, Iowa State is a favorite in the Big 12 to me. So I think Iowa State doesn't blow out Arizona, but I think they're going to win by at least 2 possessions. And then you go into Auburn at Auburn at A&M, the game I will be showing up to in grand fashion. I'll be the guest on game day. Nah. A&M, Marcel Reed, the defense over there at Texas A&M, highly concerning. Obviously, we watched a miracle with the Notre Dame game. They kind of dodged a bullet. There were some missed calls, at the offensive line on that final play. I get that. There was also a punt block, and there was also a punt within their own 5, and there was also points left on the board from A&M. So I don't think Notre Dame should have been in the lead for a lot of that game. And from what we saw versus Mateer versus what we could see from Marcel Reed, I could see this A&M offense being highly explosive. And I think Jackson Arnold is going to scramble quite a bit versus A&M's defense. I just think that they might not be able to get a lot of things going on the ground. I think they're going to be pretty, averaging 4 or 5 yards a carry, which is pretty good. But I don't think it's going to be like Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price type running all over the A&M defense. But I think Jackson Arnold is going to scramble quite a bit, and that's going to be tough to stop. And that'll keep him in the game for at least a half. And I think in the second half, A&M will start to break away. I think A&M will win this game 31-24. I think A&M takes it. I think they continue their streak. And and I'm really excited to see how A&M can kind of continue this start. Or I would call it a miracle, but I really think A&M was in control of that Notre Dame game if the punt block, if they weren't in an instant deficit at the beginning of the game, I think it would have been tailored a lot differently. So I'm going to roll with A&M on that one. I'm going to run with the home team. Kyle Field, not an easy place to play. Jackson Arnold, I don't trust his throwing ability. I trust his running ability, but I think A&M can get that on wraps. I trust the A&M secondary. If they can get a lockdown corner. I think White is his last name, on Cam Coleman. I think that'll be the security deposit on this game. And I will want my money back after it happens. So I trust in you, A&M, which is probably not a good sign. But I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a fun game to go to and watch. It's going to be intense too, especially with, I don't know if Auburn's still ranked. That's probably right here, actually. No, Auburn's not ranked anymore. Well, that sucks. That would have been cool if they were ranked. Okay. Well, that wraps up the college football portion of this episode, and then we're going to transition directly into the NFL, which, you can, going into the NFL is week 3. Obviously headlines are how atrocious the Dallas Cowboys defense is. You look at the Thursday night game; it was an easy dub for the Bills. I will say this: something I've noticed in the NFL. Why can't anybody kick a field goal anymore? I don't understand it. I mean, there was missed field goals in week 2. There was missed field goals in week 3. There was blocked field goals in week 3. Hell, I mean, I guess that's where we'll start is, the Packers going to play the Browns. The Browns, and Myles Garrett should be in contention for MVP. He is the only person, or I would say the sole reason that the Cleveland Browns are even a 1-2 football team or even in these football games. I go look at the Browns schedule, and they got blown out by the Ravens, right? And then they lose by 1 point to the Bengals with Joe Burrow, and they beat the Packers. So the Ravens put up points against the Browns, but the other 2 games against powerful offenses, they have allowed less than 17 points in both of those football games. And you watch Myles Garrett in this one, he is constantly at the quarterback, getting at the quarterback. I mean, he literally made an offensive lineman say, "Jordan, run, Jordan." And it's like, yeah, you should. He's always there. So I'm not shocked that, because Browns are a trap game every time you play them because of that sucks. Because of Myles Garrett's presence. And, a pass rush, I've said this repeatedly if you watch this show, a pass rush can make a secondary look 5 times as good as they actually are, which is why you're seeing the Cowboys get freaking torched, because that's already a bad and bruised up secondary without any type of pass rush or any sacks. The first time Caleb Williams did not take a sack in his career in a game, I think. What was the stat? Yeah, you're going to get freaking exposed big time. And, I said to a friend that Caleb Williams is going to look like prime Mahomes versus us, and sure enough, that was the headline. But Myles Garrett can make the Browns secondary look 5 times better than what they actually are. And the secondary is pretty good. So I'm not shocked the Packers lost this game. This is kind of just like that sucks. Like the Packers lost. And then they're going to go into Dallas and Sunday Night Football and probably embarrass the shit out of them. Making Jerry Jones look like an idiot, trading away Micah Parsons. I'm sure Micah will sack Dak 3 times and hopefully not break anything on Dak. We're missing CeeDee Lamb, so I guess a little forecast on that one. That's not going to be fun whatsoever. But I'll watch this game and it's like, okay, we got a blocked field goal. I think we had a missed field goal. Let's see if it's in here. I don't know if they have it in here. Yeah. 39-yard field goal to make it 3-0. Yeah, and scoring plays. That's pretty much it. Let's see. Yeah. McManus, the 43-yard field goal to basically end the game. It's blocked. And then Flacco spikes the ball, and then a game-winning field goal from the Cleveland Browns. So that one was blocked. I'm pretty sure the Buccaneers kicker was blocked. And then, of course, the big one, which I'll go into, is the Rams versus the Eagles. This game's on me, Rams fans. I'm sorry. This one's on me. They're up 26-7. And I said, man, I can't wait to see what Jalen Hurts does when he's finally supposed to throw the football. And the Rams did not score a single fucking point after I said that. I was like, man, I can't wait to see this offense finally open up for once and actually be forced to do something difficult. And sure enough, it was drive after drive, Jalen Hurts, and granted, a lot of it was yards after contact with A.J. Brown and stuff like that. Finally got him involved. a big play from Goddard as well. But sure enough, it was drive after drive, score, 2-point conversion, score. And then the Rams, of course, get the ball last, and they go right down the football field. And you're like, okay, let's just see. Great job, guys. Coming back. Excuse me. Coming back 26-7. You got back in the game. Great job. Round of applause, everybody. Did great. Here comes the field goal. And, man, I have an eyewitness to this. They lined up for that field goal. The Rams lined up for that field goal. I said, this is blocked. I saw how they were lining up. I was like, they got something in the back pocket here. This is blocked. As soon as the snap went, Dew went straight through the line of scrimmage between the center and the guard. Blocked. And of course, Jordan Davis runs it all the way back for a touchdown. All the way back. 33-26, ball game. Holy shit, Jalen Hurts. That is astronomically bad from the Rams. Not a single point. How does that happen? And I guess it's getting complacent offensively. But if Matthew Stafford is such a top 5 quarterback, I just don't understand how against the Eagles defense, who, yeah, I get it, they're strong at the defensive front, and that makes the linebackers and secondary look a little bit better than they actually are. But Matthew Stafford was torching them in the first half. They just couldn't finish a couple of drives. You tell me all that went away after a 12-minute break? I don't believe it. I watch those games go, man, that shit's scripted. And then, the Jets getting a blocked field goal and returning it for a touchdown to gain the lead. And then freaking Baker Mayfield, for like the third time this year already, within 3 games, does a comeback drive and wins the football game. And Baker could be in contention for an MVP this year. Let's be honest with ourselves. Baker, over the last 3 years, has looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And this goes back to my take on the disciples, is what I call them. That's how I categorized and tiered them. It was like the best. I can't remember what name I had for them. The maestros, I think. That was tier 1. They're just the people that they're pulling stuff out of their ass. They're doing stuff that no other quarterback can do. And of course, that was at the time Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar. And then that tier 2 was, Burrow and people like that. And then the disciples were, if you can establish a foundation underneath them and implement that into a season with stability meaning we got the GM. He's aggressive. We've got the coach. He's a good coach. We got the coordinators. They pair with the coach. We got the weapons. We got the defense. Key emphasis on defense. We got all these pieces together, and we're going to stabilize it for our quarterback. And when these quarterbacks get them, these Baker Mayfields, these Jared Goffs, these Dak Prescotts, these Jalen Hurts, the Justin Herberts, all these different quarterbacks, when they get that stuff, they're the best. They are the best versions of themselves. They are the franchise quarterbacks. They are the people they are who you drafted them to be. And that's what we're seeing with Baker. He's had this same stability for 3 years. The last 2 with Buccaneers, and so far so good this year. And we're seeing the best version of Baker Mayfield. And, all I got to say as a Dak supporter is if Baker wins an MVP, and, I'd be upset because I feel like Dak's MVP was stolen when Lamar won his last MVP. But I digress. But nothing gets a white man more excited than Baker Mayfield, if you're a football fan. So, and the Broncos, they continue to struggle, but this is the first time, I think, since 1966 that the Chargers have started 3-0. Yeah. And people they were fucking coming after me. They were like, oh, hypothetical Herbert support over here. Freaking Jared doesn't know shit about football because he's a hypothetical Herbert guy. And if Herbert had all these hypotheticals applied to him, he'd be Superman. And what are we seeing? And he still doesn't have that great of a roster. But what are we seeing? they're actually really damn good when they get a good head coach, when they establish a run game, when they get some weapons. And granted, Quentin Johnston's catching the football, but Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Keenan Allen paired up with Amari and Hampton, and they got the pieces on the O-line. The defense is actually pretty decent this year, which is something we never really get to see with the Chargers. They're 3-0 for the first time since 1966. So I look at all those things and I go, well, that it's a good thing that they're pretty good. It's a good thing that they got the foundation to support Herbert, because now people are starting to see the truth. So, all right. Well, honestly, I don't really have that much for the NFL, but I forecast this upcoming Sunday. We got Sunday Night Football versus the Packers and Cowboys, which would have been a good a matchup if the Cowboys had anybody healthy. Without CeeDee Lamb, without Tyler Booker, without Connor Beebe, without a shell of himself, Trayvon Diggs. I don't know if Jadeveon Clowney is going to play. Without Deron Bland, without Ravel Jr., all these different cats just out. Of course, without Micah Parsons anymore, and Micah Parsons being on the Packers. I think you're going to see an atrocity on defense. You're going to see rushing 4, putting 7 back in coverage, playing cover 3 and cover 4. You're going to see Donovan Wilson continue to shit the bed at safety. You're going to see these practice squad guys get lit up by wide receiver 3s in the Packers. It's going to be a nightmare. I think it's going to be a nightmare. I think the Packers could potentially put up 40 on us. And, people are going to laugh at Dak, but that defense is terrible. And then another game to keep an eye on, I think, in the morning slate. This is an 8:30 a.m. game. It might be, I don't remember where it's at. Is it in London? Yeah, where is this game at? No, it's in Dublin, Ireland. Why do we keep putting games in Ireland? I don't get it. So this game is in Ireland. Vikings versus Steelers. Carson Wentz is probably going to continue to start this game, depending on J.J. McCarthy's injury. But I think the Steelers are going to slip out of victory in this one. The Vikings are off on a fun start because they played the Bengals, who just, if you watch that game, all the Bengals were doing was giving the Vikings the ball in plus territory. Fumble, interceptions, another fumble, turnover. It was bad. It was awful. And then in the noon slot, I think a game to pay attention to, just in terms of like sports takes and hot takes and things like that, because I've had an agenda about CJ Stroud. One to keep an eye on, and this is not one you're going to want to watch, but just to keep an eye on, I guess, is the Titans and Texans. If the Texans go 0-4, yeah, if they go 0-4, give me a fucking break. But the best game in the noon slot is going to be the Eagles and Buccaneers. And the Eagles and Buccaneers Buccaneers will not have Mike Evans in this one. Baker's going to be playing against the Eagles. I'm excited for this one. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. This is going to be a fun fantasy matchup as well. I'm taking the Eagles by at least a field goal. I think the Buccaneers have had too much trouble finishing football games, and I think against the Eagles, you just can't do that. So I'm taking the Eagles in that one. And then I go to the afternoon slot. You get the Ravens and Chiefs. The Chiefs might get back on track, but I think, dude, either of these teams starting 1-3 is bad news. Both of them are sitting at 1-2. The Chiefs have looked bad to start the season. I think it's more more towards the fact that they don't have any weapons right now, so it's tough to get anything working offensively. But I look at it in terms of Ravens have a lot more strength offensively. The Chiefs do not. The Ravens have a pretty decent defense. No, that's not true. The Ravens don't have a good defense, and the Chiefs do. So I can see the Chiefs sneaking out a W here somehow, some way, within, and I'm talking low scoring. I think the Chiefs find a way to freaking dig out a W. I don't know what it is, but the Ravens, something's wrong with them. I don't know. It's Derrick Henry fumbling. It's the defense letting up like 38 points versus the Lions. It's something's wrong with them. They pick and choose which game they just want to light the scoreboard up. Then Monday Night Football going to the Bengals and Broncos. The Broncos are going to get back to 2-2 at even 500. So I think the Broncos, they had a poor loss versus Indianapolis on a last second field goal. and they had another loss where they had the lead, a command in the game versus the Chargers, and lost that game too. So they just got to find a way to finish football games. The defense is there. The offense needs to pick it up. The offense is what's lacking. I think against the Bengals, they'll get the offense cooking quite a bit, and they'll end up with a pretty handy victory versus the Bengals and evening it up at 2-2. So, well, that's your NFL outlook for this upcoming week, as well as your college football analysis from the previous week and leading into week 5. I'm super excited for this college football slate. If you have any plans this weekend, cancel them. Go watch college football. Bring the lady. Do what you got to do. And if you are not a follower of this show, I encourage you to follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Shadow the Script, or you can find us at TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter, searching Shadow the Script, or searching at STS_pod for all of our 30 to 60 second clips, and us being an outlet of escape, escaping from the mainstream media and finding an authentic truth debunking podcast known as the STS Network. All right, fellas, thank you guys for tuning in. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll be seeing you guys from College Station live on Saturday. All right, later.